Darling, you have just begun. By Dancing Lassie. Chapter 2. Jaskier is surprised to be the first to wake. Geralt, the ridiculous mutant, seems to be able to survive on very little sleep and is usually the one to shake the bard awake in the mornings. But, Jaskier reasons, Geralt's been under a lot of stress recently and deserves a lie-in. The sun hasn't even risen yet. He wishes he could just curl up in this ridiculously comfy bed, safely ensconced with his daughter and his witcher, but there is an uncomfortable nagging sensation in the back of his mind. It refuses to let up, to wait until a more reasonable hour. Very carefully, he extracts himself from the warmth, pressing soft kisses to the tousled sleeping heads. Quickly slipping on some warm clothes, he ventures out into the hallway. It takes him a good 20 minutes to make it back to the dining room. The keep is a veritable maze. "Where's Geralt?" A gruff voice speaks up behind him, causing him to jump and spin around. It is the scarred witcher from the entrance the night before, Eskel. Jaskier smiles his best winning smile at the witcher, but Eskel doesn't seem taken in by it. "Still sleeping. Just thought I'd go for an early morning stroll. My sister is convinced they're good for you." "It's dangerous to wander outside the keep. There are monsters in these mountains, and they get desperate in winter. They stray much closer to the walls than they'd normally die." "Thank you for the warning. I'll be careful," Jaskier promises. Eskel does not look convinced, but another voice cuts across the room before he can try and dissuade the bard.
"Ah, Jaskier, I'm glad you're up."
It's the oldest witcher, Geralt's mentor, Vesemir. Geralt only has good things to say about him, but Jaskier's treacherous brain keeps reminding him that this is the man who trained hundreds of young boys for the trials. One quiet night around their campfire, Geralt had admitted to him that usually only 3 in 10 of the boys made it out of the trials alive. He'd once shared the horrific statistics with Ina, trying to understand how Geralt could love this man.
"You said he was a swordsmaster. If he hadn't taught them properly, then far fewer than 30% would have made it. It may sound horrific to you, but from your witcher's point of view, Vesemir is the man who taught him enough to give him a chance of survival."
This is why he needs to stop sharing things with Ina. She always tries to inject sense and reason into the conversation. It's no fun being dramatic with someone who insists on pointing out the logic of a situation. He should have gone to Etta. He pushes down his misgivings and gives Vesemir another of his smiles. He's going to be spending all winter here. Best to try and keep things friendly. "The bard wants to go for a walk," Eskel interjects disbelievingly.
"What a splendid idea."
Vesemir shocks them with his easy agreement.
"I'll go with you."
"You said we needed to start repairing the east wall today," Eskel reminds him, crossing his arms suspiciously and frowning at Jaskier. Why is he being given such a look? "You said it would take us all day, and you wanted an early start." Vesemir seems reluctant to go about his original plan. His eyes are fixed almost greedily on Jaskier. It's rather unsettling. "Well, in that case, I'm sure I can manage without an escort. If I could just grab a piece of bread or something for breakfast, then that would be much appreciated." The nagging feeling in his head is getting stronger, and he knows it won't leave him alone until he's fulfilled his obligation. He ducks round both witchers, snatches a bread roll from the basket on the table, and waves cheerfully as he sets off. His first obstacle is the portcullis. He has no idea how to raise it. He pokes at it ineffectually until the dark-haired witcher spots him and comes over.
"It's built to stop people from coming and going, you know,"
he drawls, arms crossed over his chest in an unimpressed manner.
"It's kind of the point of the whole thing."
Jaskier remarks, regarding the witcher warily. Apart from Vesemir, he's sensing a bit of hostility coming from these new witchers, and he's not really sure what he's done to deserve it. Apart from crazy mages, most people think he's an absolute delight on first introduction. "I was happy to walk down by the river." At a pinch, he could dive into the well within the keep and follow the groundwater until he is able to emerge in the stream, but that would take a huge amount of effort. He's only ever done it once before, and that time he'd had Mama to guide him. He'd been violently sick when he'd regained corporeal form. Working his way slowly through cracks in the rock beneath the earth's surface is complicated and exhausting. There's a very good chance he might pull himself back together wrong when he emerges, or become lost forever in the cracks.
"Best follow me, then."
The witcher strides off, and Jaskier has to run to catch up. "Sorry," he huffs. "I don't think we were properly introduced last night. I'm Jaskier."
"Lambert."
Geralt had previously described Lambert as his much
pricklier brother.
Nevertheless, Jaskier manages to put on a genuine grin. "Pleased to meet you." No acknowledgement. He's in a place where his usual godly charms have absolutely no effect. Neither, it appears, to his personal ones. When he had first met Geralt, this had been exhilarating. Now, surrounded and outnumbered, he's starting to feel a creeping sense of anxiety. He forces himself to wrestle down the urge to let a bit more power seep through, to try and encourage the Witcher to accept his friendship. He doesn't think Lambert would take it well. He doesn't like this. Only one other person has ever succeeded in making him feel such unease, and she still haunts his nightmares. Lambert leads him to an outer wall with a rather large hole in it. This must be the wall Vesemir is planning to repair. Lambert gestures Jaskier through, but does not cross himself.
"Are you really a river god?"
he asks. He's looking Jaskier up and down, and he seems distinctly underwhelmed. At this moment, Jaskier isn't surprised. He feels wrong-footed and out of his depth. He wishes Geralt was here. "Yes," he manages with as much confidence as he can muster.
"Huh."
Lambert continues to eye him like he's a mutated kind of drowner.
"Thought you'd be more fucking impressive."
"Rude!" Lambert stalks off before Jaskier can come up with a retort. It's ever so tempting to collect the freezing water from the puddles on the ground and pelt it at Lambert's head, but he grinds his teeth mulishly together and resists. No hurting Geralt's brothers. That would be bad. The path down to the river is steep, overgrown, and deceptively slippery. Jaskier is not looking forward to having to climb back up, but he does make it to the river unharmed without being attacked by any monsters. He's just begun to toe off his boots, teeth already chattering at the thought of exposing more skin to the frigid air, when he hears a suspicious rustle behind him. It sounds very much like a heavy boot stepping on a twig. One of the Witchers has followed him. He glances around, but he knows there isn't much hope of spotting a Witcher if he's determined not to be seen. He had once jokingly convinced Geralt to play hide-and-seek with him, and had spent a frustrating couple of hours combing the woods in circles before being forced to concede defeat. The Witcher had then calmly emerged from behind a tree, only 6 feet from where Jaskier had been sitting. Geralt had mocked him about it for months. Well, he grimaces. Lambert knows what he is, so it's almost certain the others do too. He hopes they appreciate the show. He strips off the rest of his clothing, shivering uncontrollably, and dives into the Gwenlech. It's such a relief to be submerged in the water. The limb-numbing cold dissipates as his body automatically adapts to the river. "I'm here," he calls out with his mind. The nagging sensation that has been bothering him dims, and in its place he feels directions filtering gently into his brain. He sets off upstream, powering through the water at a pace no Witcher has a hope of matching. Whoever has followed him had better not try to steal his clothes in revenge. The dawn light peeking tentatively in through the window is Geralt's first clue that he's overslept. The second is Ciri's nervous shaking of his arm. "Jaskier's gone!" she informs him anxiously. She's sitting up in bed, hair tousled and eyes wide. Her blonde roots contrast strikingly with the rest of her brown hair. He and Jaskier hadn't kept up the hair dye since they parted from the squabbling ducks, but they'll need to sort out something soon, or Ciri's going to look very strange. Sure enough, there is an empty space between them where Jaskier should be, and Geralt feels a stab of panic. Of all the times for Jaskier to be the first to wake! Geralt had been relying on being the first one up as usual. He'd been hoping to snatch a few quiet moments with his brothers and Vesemir to explain some things. Well, nothing for it. He'll need to go and see what mischief his river god has managed to get up to without his supervision. Ciri's stomach growls loudly, and his own rumbles back in response. They exchange sheepish smiles, and he quickly tugs on his boots and a warmer outer layer before leaving the room to let her dress properly. He waits for her patiently outside the door, and when she emerges, she grabs his arm, huddling close to him. It leaves a ridiculously warm feeling in his heart that she now trusts him enough to look to him for comfort. Lambert, Eskel, and Cohen are in the dining room, spooning porridge into bowls.
"Fucking finally!"
Lambert crows when he spots them.
"Thought you were going to sleep all day, you lazy bastard."
Geralt bares his teeth at him, but without any attempt to intimidate. This is just how Lambert interacts with anyone he vaguely likes. Cohen kicks Geralt's brother under the table, eyes fixed on the nervous Ciri. "There's a girl present, you swine!" Of all the Witchers Lambert could have invited to overwinter at Kaer Morhen, Geralt's glad it's Cohen. He's come across the bearded witcher on the path several times before, and they've even completed the odd job together. He's a very decent sort, and Geralt's seen his soft spot for children in person. Of all the witchers here, he's the one most likely to put Ciri at ease. You must both be starving, Eskel intervenes before Lambert can retaliate. Have some breakfast. Ciri obediently shuffles forward with Geralt, but seats herself on the side of him that puts him between her and the other witchers. He can't help but approve. It's good that she's wary of strangers. So, Vesemir says you're fucking a god. Both Eskel and Colin kick Lambert this time as Ciri chokes on her first mouthful of porridge. Geralt glares at him. He knows he's due an interrogation for dropping in here with 2 unannounced guests, but he'd foolishly thought even Lambert would have enough tact to wait until they could be alone. It's Cirilla, right? Cohen smiles, his least threatening smile. It might be the smallpox scars that he tries to cover with a bushy black beard, but Cohen has always managed to put ordinary humans more at ease than Geralt and his brothers. Geralt suspects that the ugly proof of having suffered through such a human illness endears Cohen more to them. It's like he's a member of some sort of club. Ciri, she mumbles, but tries for a polite smile. Geralt keeps one thigh pressed against her own in a gesture of silent support. It's really lovely to have you here, Ciri. Do you like books? She nods. Well, how about I show you the library after breakfast? It's got some books you won't find anywhere else on the continent. She darts a glance at Geralt, who nods encouragingly, and accepts Cohen's offer. Geralt has the next 10 minutes to prepare himself before Ciri finishes her porridge and is ushered out of the room by the Griffin Witcher. Barely a second after the door closes, his 2 brothers round on him. What the fuck have you been up to? Why do they let Lambert speak? She's perched by the river at an entrance to a cave, wrapped in cozy-looking white furs. Jaskier elects to stay in the water, where it can keep him warm, having no such protection from the cold himself. He's never actually met his cousin before. Mama's brother, Uncle Boyna, was a fairly frequent visitor in Jaskier's youth, but he never brought any of his children with him. Gwen is a solemn-looking albino woman with the palest blue eyes Jaskier has ever seen. Well, that's not entirely correct. His uncle has matching ones, but beside Gwen's white hair and skin, they seem even paler. Jaskier, it's nice to meet you at last. She gives him a small smile. Not many of our kind venture here apart from my father and siblings. It's lovely to know you'll be spending the winter nearby. Perhaps we could swim together sometime. He dips his head deferentially. Thank you for letting me spend time in your territory. It's wonderful to finally meet you too. She hums a reply and lapses into silence. Jaskier fidgets. He's not good with silence. He has a bad habit of filling it. So, do you often spend your winter here? Or do you head downstream? Your river meets the Boyna at Jesperden, right? I prefer it up here. The city is so busy in the winter and I don't really like crowds. Plus the witches return here for winter, and I like to see which ones are left. There used to be so many more of them. It's sad that there are so few left. It really is. Jaskier doesn't like thinking about just how many friends Geralt lost when Kaer Morhen was sacked by a bloodthirsty mob. No wonder his brothers are so suspicious of unexpected visitors. Do you ever talk to them? I used to, she admits, slowly discarding her clothing and joining him in the water. But I got too attached to the young ones, and so few made it through the trials. It was easier to keep my distance. Occasionally someone would catch my eye, but not for a good few years. It sounds lonely. Jaskier cannot imagine living such a life. He loves being able to bound across the continent in search of new places and adventure. Even when compelled by Mama to stay by his own river, he'd taken advantage of Lentonhope's busy streets and many entertainments. Gwen seems more like his sister Vda, content to stick close to her own river and live a quiet life. I moved around a lot as a human. My family were nomads, but when I became Gwenlech, I finally had a place to settle. I loved my family, but it was something I'd always yearned for. When I want company, I go down to Jesperden, and when I tire of the noise there, I come back here. The contrast makes the quiet of the mountains all the more beautiful. The view is stunning. The rocky tree and snow-covered peaks tower above them, sweeping up to touch the clear blue sky. From here, Jaskier can just make out Kaer Morhen, built into the side of a tall, jagged mountain.
Father says you're a wild one. I think he enjoys hearing how much trouble you cause Auntie Yaruga.
Jaskier shoots her an affronted look. I do not cause that much trouble.
Your brother visited me about 8 years ago to warn me to watch out for a violet-eyed sorceress. He gave me strict instructions on how she should be treated if she dared to try and step into my river.
She eyes the scar on his shoulder, and it gives off a sharp stab of phantom pain. She smiles apologetically at his grimace.
I'm sorry that was a bad example. It was poorly done.
He shrugs and tries to reassure her by his expression that he hasn't taken offense. He would really rather talk about anything else. Did you ever hear about the elves I met in Posada? She graciously allows him to distract her from the topic of Yennefer.
No, I don't think I have.
Well, you're in for a treat then. He settles himself more comfortably against the bank and spins out the slightly embellished tale of his and Geralt's first meeting. It is quite nice, he decides, to know that he has one of his own family up here while he's visiting Geralt's. Puts him on a more even footing. Where's Vesemir? Geralt tries to delay the interrogation. He'd much rather have to do this only once.
He went off after that supposed god you brought with you. The idiot wanted to go for a walk by the river.
Lambert snorts derisively. I did try to talk him out of it, Geralt. Eskel places a comforting hand on his arm, as though he thinks Geralt might be annoyed with them for not stopping Jaskier. I warned him about the monsters, but he was determined to go.
He is fucking weird, Lambert grumbles. What the hell is he? All Vesemir would tell us last night was that he was an opisa or something. I had to go look that up before bloody dawn. Could only find one tiny fucking paragraph in one really old dusty book that was shoved on a top shelf at the very back of the library.
How awful for you, Eskel comments dryly. And it was in Orissa, you moron. What did you find out? Geralt asks. He's slightly worried, remembering what his own initial research into river gods had uncovered. It had turned out to be inaccurate and unflattering, and he needs to disabuse his brothers of any false notions they've picked up as soon as possible.
Not much. Powerful nature spirit, blah blah. Created using a human sacrifice, blah blah. Enchanting and stairs, blah blah.
Lambert's tone is unconcerned and mocking, but his eyes are sharp. Both he and Eskel are examining Geralt intently. They're all people who drowned in the river. Geralt corrects. He still regrets his woefully inadequate response when he and Jaskier had visited the site of the god's murder. His ignorance at the time of Jaskier's true nature does little to soothe the ache the memory has left behind. Jaskier's not sure what singles them out to transform into Orissa, but there's no slitting of throats and letting the river run red with blood, or any of that nonsense. They, in effect, are the sacrifice. He doesn't explain more. If Jaskier wants to share his sad beginning, then that is his story to tell. He doesn't come across as a powerful deity, Eskel chimes in cautiously, except for how he seems to have you and Vesemir wrapped around his little finger. He grabs Geralt's face, looking deeply into his eyes, searching for something. Are you sure he hasn't bewitched you? No, don't brush me off! Eskel cuts Geralt off when he opens his mouth, enraged, ready to defend Jaskier. I want you to examine all your interactions with him and tell me honestly if you think he's manipulating your feelings. I've never seen you pine for someone the way you did for him almost 8 years ago. That had been the winter just after Jaskier had been stabbed, when he'd been confused and hurting and knew only that Jaskier was beginning to recover somewhere out of his reach. He hasn't had such a dark and depressing winter since, and he hopes never to have one like it again. He's furious at Eskel's claim that he might be enchanted, even though he recognizes how hypocritical that is. He had the same fear, and it almost cost him Jaskier. The trouble is, he doesn't know how to assure them that he's not bewitched, and that Vesemir is just being unashamedly nosy. Jaskier is better explanations than him, but it's not as if the bard's account would be taken without a large pinch of salt. If I were bewitched, we would have been together years ago, and I don't pine. This does help break the tension slightly as both Lambert and Eskel roll their eyes at him. I know what he can do. I've seen him do it, but I trust him. We've traveled together for almost 20 years, and he's never pushed me for more than I'm willing to give. This doesn't exactly relax either Witcher, but before they can continue to question him, Vesemir comes striding into the dining room with his disgruntled expression on his face.
I thought you wanted us working on the east wall all day.
Lambert was the only one with enough cheek to call Vesemir out so openly.
It can wait until tomorrow. Geralt has some explaining to do first.
Did you really follow him out? Geralt raises an eyebrow incredulously. His brothers and Vesemir are going to give Jaskier anxiety issues if they don't ease up soon.
He dived into the river and swam upstream. Have you seen how fast he can swim? It's extraordinary. Do you think his biology has adapted to allow him to move with such speed through water? How much does he weigh? Maybe if his bones are like that.
What's the story with the girl? Geralt is grateful for Eskel's interruption. He can feel the judgment in their gazes as he tells them of his first visit to Cintra, his foolish claim under the law of surprise, and his resolute avoidance of the country since.
Well,
Vesemir doesn't sound very impressed.
at least you stepped up when you absolutely had to. The princess will be safe here. We can train her up to be as fierce as her grandmother.
He strokes his chin thoughtfully.
We'll need to start teaching her the basics tomorrow. Some sword forms and how to move and dodge. We'll need to build up her physical condition too. Ensure her diet is appropriate.
Lambert, you can go out and gather the mushrooms and herbs we'll need. Why me? Lambert complains. Because I'm not foolish enough to believe you'll actually be much help with repairing the well. Eskel and Geralt will help me with that. Where is the girl?
Cohen's showing her the library.
Geralt reveals.
Cohen can no doubt entertain her until Jaskier gets back. Then he can switch with you, Geralt, so you can give your guests the basic tour. Understood?
They all nod, and a tight knot of anxiety in Geralt's chest begins to loosen. Things aren't perfect yet, but at least his brothers seem willing to give Jaskier a chance, and they'll help with training Ciri. They have a plan.